welcome back to Voices on the Bridge. Today is a very special occasion, talk show. As we build up to Women's Month, we're going to have a series of conversations with extraordinary women, or should I say ordinary women that are doing extraordinary work in our time. And so this evening we are on the couch having a very real conversation with my sister, someone that I believe got connected because of sacred stories. Lynn Hill, welcome.
Thank you for sharing the sacred space with me, Karen.
Wow, I'm honored. As you would have seen in the previous episode, the bridge is really a connector of people, whether we're speaking to the ordinary auntie cooking food on the Cape Flats, to people who hail from the Cape Flats, from Cape Town. I remember writing a story on you after I was at an event, saying I met this amazing woman who is from the soil, from this soil that I walk on, beneath my feet. And so, poet, multi-global award-winning motivational speaker, and author. You know, when brown women do things, it excites me. Because for the longest time, we come with that bag of oppression, that need to almost be louder, the need to prove ourselves. And so I get thrilled, I get excited when I see women doing stuff, and older women, for us younger generation to follow. And so 2 books that is here with us. And I think I want to say, I want to quote you as we enter into the sacred space. It takes the same amount of soil to dig a grave that it does to plant a garden. It was when I could have been buried that I chose to be planted. So we all have a choice, and I chose power over pain and purpose over self-pity. And so she sits here, a queen from the Boerkaap.
Queen from the Boerkaap.
From the Boerkaap.
From the Cape Flats of love.
I love it. Tell us about Lynn Hill from the Boerkaap.
Lynn Hill from the Boerkaap was born in the heart of apartheid, 1967. 8 years later, there was the forced removals.
Sure.
And it was the most beautiful time of my life, Taryn. It was when children still played on the pavements. It was hopscotch after we had our bath at night. It was so close to Table Mountain that I wanted to touch it. Close to Signal Hill. From my grandma's stoop, you could see the boats coming in, you could hear the boats coming in. It was a good time to be alive. It was a safe time to be alive then. And obviously after that we needed to relocate. We relocated to Grassy Park before roads existed. I remember thinking, why are there so many tadpoles? The tadpoles had become frogs. And all was well. I had a fairly good childhood, safe childhood, and I was thriving. Always loved school, always loved recitations, always loved life, loved my grand to bits, loved my parents.
You stayed with both mom and dad?
I stayed with both mom and dad.
So a typical Christian home?
Christian home, let's leave it there.
Yeah. And so, you took me there. That's what poets do. They take us to the space, and I'm smelling the masala in the Boerkaap, and I'm smelling the biryani and the cook sisters on a Sunday. And I'm hearing the mosque, the prayer. And then, the call to pray, and we hear the church bells, and it was such a beautiful time.
Very eclectic, very just beautiful, lots of unity
Mhm.
between various religions, and no judgmentality.
Mm. And so you would, I mean, in terms of the work that you do, but also academia, you understand the trauma of our past.
Hectically so, because there was 76 and I was in grade 3, running away up Adley Street from
Sure.
tear gas and just seeing those Caspers and seeing. And so 76, 80, 81 and 85 I was in matric and never landed up writing because I refused to go write in a police base, airfield,
Sure.
wingfield air base where the very murderers killing the children in the township were going to invigilate the exam of my
Sure.
life. Come on now. And so I didn't write, didn't show up for the first exam, and I remember my dad coming home that night and calling me a failure.
Sure.
One of my talks I now do is living without labels. I wonder why. Yeah, obviously in that moment I owned it. And when I was studying under quite adverse circumstances, two of the people, he called me a failure, and another relative told me that I'd never be able to study with a screaming child. And as I did my studies at UW's, then married under quite hectic emotional conditions, the two of them were in the front row of my graduation for the entire duration of my studies, because I visualized my graduation every day.
Sure.
And today he's the proudest father that a dad can ever be. He says, "Are you really an Argus boy's daughter?"
Wow.
If he watches this, he's going to say, "You mentioned me."
Sure.
And yeah.
How similar. I remember, because of our past, my dad used to say, "Wanneer maak jy klaar met die studies?" Because they wanted to go work. And he put so much pressure on me to get done. It wasn't a joy like other parents would come and they would invest in that tertiary. It was so much pressure. But the day I graduated, we had a moment alone. I remember at the Baxter, and he said to me, "I'm so proud of you." And then he teared up, and I needed to forgive.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation about the scourge we live with, gender-based violence, every day, every minute, from Lavender Hill to Mitchell's Plain to Soweto, globally, there's an issue. And we speak about statistics, we speak about numbers, data, hotspots, but behind all of that is a heart. It's a victim, it's a survivor, it's a child, it's just someone that was never supposed to be there, or that was never supposed to happen to her. And so this is why you're here. This is why God saved you, to come back and tell us about the heart behind the data. And so I want to get right in there, Lynn, if you would allow me, and tell us about that day, that moment, or that season of your life.
Sure. It was. So I was raped more than once. I was raped at the age of 15. I married at 19 because I felt pregnant, and obviously gave the persecutors the evidence to say, you see, she actually was an easy girl. And went through 17 years of marriage, divorced, put the kids through varsity single-handedly by the grace of God. And at the age of 51, I was raped for a second time while on a business trip in Johannesburg. So you had two violations. The one at 15 was very, very physical, brutal, to a point that the police said it was the most brutal they'd ever seen. They thought a train had ridden over my face. 51, I was drugged and re-drugged over a period that took me out for about 8 hours before I was dumped in a parking lot. And in between that was a marriage, and I've reframed gender-based violence into gender-based violation, because not all violation needs to be violent or is violent. And so in that 17 years, I went through quite a bit of emotional and financial violation. So that day for me could be being raped in a toilet, which was not my own home. It was a different home. I was raped in a toilet on the 1st of January 1983.
A year before I was born.
Wow.
Sure.
And so I'm slightly older than you.
You would never say.
God is good. He took me from my sleep and carried me to the toilet. And I remember waking up as he was lifting me up, and I thought it was a dream. And I could not understand the dream. And then he put me down in the toilet, and he started beating the daylights out of me. As I was just going through the motions and prepping for tonight, it was shock. How strategic were you not to have done that, to have pulverized me, beaten the crap out of me, every hole in my body was bleeding. He had punched my eyes shut. It was really traumatic, and when that pain became excruciating, it was that moment of knowing I was not dreaming. This was not a nightmare. It was actually real, and I couldn't understand why it was happening. This was someone who belonged to my church, and it lasted for something like an hour. And I remember being at Jessica's funeral to support my son, because Jessica had her brother and my son had studied together. And Jessica, who had died with her grandpa when we had that spate of femicides.
Yes.
Jessie,
yes.
Yeah. And sitting in that church that day, I realized you weren't just sexually brutalized and beaten, you were actually tortured. And what he did in that estimated hour, was beat me to a pulp, choke the daylights out of me, and when I was weak enough, he actually decided to choke me some more, and to literally then, what I say in my poem was this endless stabbing. I didn't know if it was a sharp knife or a jagged blade, but that is what it felt like.
So I just want to go back to the physical space. You say you were 15.
I was 15.
And you can, as much as you want to allow and divulge, was it your home? You're 15, he wakes you up.
No, I was not in my home.
Okay.
I was not in my home. It was a different house. It was, there was a context for how I got to the house. And it was a context of the person who actually had taken me there, I actually had trusted.
And
the person was meant to look after me.
The person that took you to this house.
Yeah.
So this person and the perpetrator was together, or is it the same person?
They were socializing. Yeah.
And
in a group. But I was not part of the socializing because I was much younger. So I was not socializing with them. Okay.
And sure. So So, and you say he was from your church?
Yes. I did not know him prior to that day. I heard that when I was when I came out of sedation. So I had no, he was not, I'd never seen him as a congregant. We never went to the same mass together. There was none of that.
So it wasn't even an acquaintance? You didn't know this man?
No. He was a total stranger to me. Beat the daylights out of me. Did unspeakable things. I was untouched. I had one kiss to my name, and it wasn't even a proper kiss. And I was as pure as a 15-year-old could be. Sunday school teacher, beauty queen, dancer, scholar, kind of had everything going for me. And then he never knew when to stop. He went on, he choked me to death, and I died. I crossed over.
Sure.
I remember, as I was walking towards the tunnel, I had two regrets that I did not say goodbye to my mom and my grandma. And then I touched the other side. I was sharing on Saturday with two other sisters. We had a 3-way call, and I was saying to them, I'm finding that the more healed I am becoming, the more vulnerable I am becoming, because before I would fight to hold the tears back.
Yes.
And now I no longer need to do that, because it does not make me weak. In fact, there is a power in vulnerability, because tears actually connect us to the hearts of those who are watching and witnessing. And obviously it was not part of the script.
No, and I love that. I want it to be as organic as possible. Yeah. I don't think you plan to tear up, but you say something so powerful. The interconnectedness with healing and vulnerability. Healing demands a vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And we need to almost cultivate those moments for people to become vulnerable, because it's only then that work can happen.
Absolutely. And also just this mystification of healing, when people believe that when you are healed, you no longer have a need to cry.
Sure.
And when you are healed, you no longer need to demonstrate the emotions. But this is the height of my healing, because I've never felt more free and more fearless than now.
Come on.
And so the other amazing thing is that I shared just the other day in another interview with the US, and I was doing exactly, saying exactly the same thing, but I never choked up.
Sure.
And so every moment presents its own essence. Where were we?
Sure. So I'm a storyteller, and so I'm going to take you back
down the tunnel of death.
The tunnel of death. You crossed over,
touching the other side with the big toe of my right foot. A gap between the here and the there. By that time, I could smell the iodine in my blood. But there was this relief of this resignation of there's going to be no more pain, and I felt the pain starting to disappear.
Sure.
And as I touched the other side, I was retracted, and it felt like the speed of lightning. And I remember regaining consciousness, and above me stood the hugest angel. with the most beautiful wings.
Mm.
And I remember taking my blood-stained hand and touching the angel's wing. And in that moment regaining supernatural strength. To a point that I started to negotiate for my life. It was beyond a 15-year-old's brain having gone through the trauma I had just gone through. I started to negotiate a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
I started to say to him, I won't tell. We can keep this just between the two of us. But it was my way of getting out of that toilet. And I remember trying to open. I got up out of that blood and slid because the entire toilet was just bloody. And I said to him, let me just open the door. But he had locked the key. And I asked him, where's my underwear? And he said to me, I flushed it. And then I negotiated. Fast forward, I ran for my life. It was the same avenue I once lived in Grassy Park, so I knew a neighbor outside. And the neighbor then phoned the police, went to that particular house, beat him, and waited for the police to come. And that was 15. It was 1983. I remember getting to the police station and them saying, this is a real rape.
What does that mean?
It actually meant, I guess, that had I not been beaten in the way that I was beaten, would I have been believed? And that still exists today.
Absolutely. Had you not worn the short skirt, we could say. I mean, those
yes,
are the things.
Absolutely.
Had you not smelled of alcohol, if you had reeked of alcohol, they may have not believed. And so, because that was such a powerful thing that you said now, it almost triggered me. This is a real rape. So you have to look a certain, the violence needs to be physical. Because often we say that the violence doesn't have to have a physical appearance. It could be internal, the violence.
Absolutely. So I was wearing a baggy jeans. I was beaten. My eyes were already half shut by then. And I wasn't reeking of alcohol. And so that I guess ticked the boxes
for a real rape. Sure.
And the long and short was I got examined, went through that entire process seamlessly, but was put under 72 hours of sedation because obviously my body had gone into shock. And I remember waking up out of that and realizing that this was, and feeling my face, and everything was 4 times the size because of the swelling. I couldn't see myself because my eyes had been beaten shut. So 72 hours later, my eyes were still shut. And I remember saying, okay, if this is my bed, then the mirror's got to be over there. And my dog was next to me, and I found my way to the mirror. And then I remember forcing my eyes open. And what stared back at me, Taryn, was a horror mask. And yet again, an organic survival strategy was in that moment staring at that horror mask and saying to myself, this is not me. And organic survival strategy, because it was a moment of disassociation.
I was going to say that.
A moment of disassociation of if the mask staring back is not me, then I will not be defined by this.
Sure.
obviously I didn't realize it in that moment. All I know was saying to myself, this is not me, and dissociating that is the experience, but it is not who I am. And I think that was almost the unlocking of a walk to reclamation. When I awoke up out of sedation, I found out that he was out on 500 Rand bail. I also found out that I had not been the first victim. I allegedly had been victim number 4. And the decision I made, as numb as I was, as brutalized as I was, as frozen as I was I will be the last. If I was the 4th, then I will be the last. And again, I was only 15.
I was going to say at 15, that's a statement of a soldier. Just to proclaim something like that at that age, I will not be the last. But almost you stood in that gap.
And I think it was the work of the Holy Spirit. I think everything was the work of the Holy Spirit. The angel was God's evidence that you've gone through this. But what the enemy has planned for evil, I, as God, have the capacity to turn that into good. That you were protected through this all. And yes, it was not fair because you were so pure. But sparing my life from death was not just sparing my life, it was birthing my purpose at 15. And what a blessing it was to have found that purpose in my deepest pain, when adults spend a lifetime searching for purpose
and meaning.
And I knew I could not have gone through this for nothing. And so at 16 I started to find and search what was the something. But again, back to I would be the last, was then needing to defend my truth in court.
So there was a court.
He comes out on bail of 500 Rand. He lives in my community.
And that is what we see today.
We still see it today. Today they're coming out on 750 Rand. I'm 58 minus 15. We're speaking 43 years later. Bail has increased by 250 Rand. And we ask ourselves, why are we the red capital of the world? What a hideously rhetorical question.
Wow.
And so I lived in fear. The court date was set for July. And when I got to Wynberg Regional Court in July, they looked at the pictures. My parents had taken pictures and they said, this cannot happen in a regional court. This is high court. And I was the first girl of color to defend my truth in the High Court in October in 1983. And he was convicted. He only got 10 years. And I felt betrayed. I asked myself, is this what 10 months of fear, 10 months of mustering the courage, 10 months of journaling so that I would not forget. And yet it was that level of journaling that would birth writing as a creative expression for purposes of healing, which I now teach others. He was convicted, and I thought I was safe for 10 years. But I would not ever, I would lock a toilet. I would, if I traveled work-wise, I would not sleep the night before I needed to work.
Sure.
I would be getting up to check that the door was locked. So there was a lot of triggers, my safety, the loneliness, all of that. He got 10 years, and then when I guess I was ready to hear it, and that was in my early 30s, I heard that he did a fraction of that 10 years because the church had given him a character reference
Sure.
to get out of jail earlier. And that was the experience at 15. It influenced my life, it influenced who I became.
Your issues of faith.
My issues of faith, knowing that if angels are real, God had to be real. Knowing that he had put me through this, but I was still spared from death to live my purpose. Finding that something, and a part of finding the something was studying psychology as a result of what I had been through, sitting in therapy 1 year later, going through the most hectic PTSD, and Kerry would say to me, I know what you're going through. I know what you're going through. And I would sit as a 17-year-old and want to scream, and I would silently scream, to say, you don't know, and only someone who has gone through what I have been through will be able to understand it. But those were the moments that were being divinely orchestrated by God for me to become a healer, but not just an ordinary healer, one who would have the deepest empathy that no psychology textbook could teach you, because I had been there. And so it influenced my vocational trajectory. It influenced my character, because I often say pain crafted my character. It wasn't just empathy, it was humility, it was compassion, it was having the heart to reach out to others.
So I want to go back, and you're 16. He's out. He's done his time. How old were you when he came out?
I was in my early 30s.
And when you got married at 19, and so
Obviously not healed.
Not healed
at all. Stepped into a space that was not, it was a toxic space.
And I know the word. I almost want to debunk this word purity, because we associate purity with virginity. And this pressure that's put on young girls. I met with a 6-month-old baby whose purity was taken away in Ceres through an open window. It was the neighbor. And so that same 6-month-old, or the 12-year-old, or the 15-year-old is needing to tell someone one day that I lost this purity, this innocence. And when it's romantic relationships, the man, they often don't understand.
Or because you have lost the purity in inverted commas, you either are seen then as damaged goods, not only by the individual who you are connected with, but by society. The irony is that very many who actually look at you and see you as damaged goods are the very ones with skeletons in their closets, or the most promiscuous. And there was a red flag while I was going out, and the red flag was once he had heard, so I never told him, he heard from someone else and someone else said to him, "You do know what happened to her."
Sure.
And then he went quiet. And that should have been the red flag. It was resurrected by a family member, the quietness.
Yeah.
But when you are wounded, your choices are fractured.
Yes.
When you are wounded and because wounds and pain diminish us, and when we are in a state of diminishment, our self-esteem is not what it must be. Our sense of worthiness is not what it must be. And worthiness and deservingness goes hand in hand. And so in our unhealed states, we will tend to compromise the quality of our choices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you get married anyway.
Look, I think for me, the marriage part, the going out with the man part, the needing to have connected with someone. First, I was told I was so internally damaged that I would not be able to have children. And yes, she was unplanned, but at least I was pregnant. She did arrive at 800 grams at 23 weeks. It is in the book. But I think at an unconscious level, I had a need to prove not only to myself, but to others that I wasn't damaged.
And that you are worthy.
That I am worthy. That there is nothing dysfunctional about me. And I mean, how dysfunctional is that? Hey? That victims, survivors of trauma, the shame that you irrationally take on, it's unspeakable. And I guess this was an opportunity at an unconscious level for me to feel less shameful, although it obviously blew up in my face when I felt pregnant. But again, you know, you spoke earlier, Taryn, and you said this thing of purity. So it wasn't only the damaged goods, there's a mystification about rape. Because when I came out of sedation, I was asked what the sex was like.
Sure.
So to have looked and to have seen what I looked like, and to be asked what the sex was like, was an absolute disconnect for me. And you would expect at least a male to have asked that. But it was two females.
Sure.
And it was two females who was actually part of that social group in that house. And I mention it now because today there is still a mystification around what rape is. And rape is not sexual intercourse.
Absolutely. And I spoke about this earlier. Sometimes we think we haven't made strides, but then it needed to be intercourse for it to be rape. There needed to be some form of penetration for it to be classified as rape.
Yes.
And I said something earlier, and not because of your story, but because of my story. I saw the red flag, but I got married anyway. I went ahead because my need to be loved and feel like I'm worthy. The suitcase of shame that I carry, if he's okay with it, then I'm going to be okay with it. Because I just have this dire need to be loved by this man. And regardless if he's going to call me slut now once a month, it's okay. He'll say sorry and he'll love me again. So, how this marriage, there's a child, tell us about that.
He's passed on, so may he rest in peace. it was a very complex situation because to the world we looked like an amazing public couple.
Power couple.
Power couple.
Yeah.
And did the karaoke together, did the ballroom dances together, did church together. But what was public and what went on privately was very, very different. But I had no one to tell. Who could I share with? Because I couldn't disappoint my parents again. That was the narrative. I disappointed them by being raped. I disappointed them by falling pregnant. So who could I tell? And I guess time did its own telling. And it was very, very difficult. I studied. It was challenging to study and be emotionally abused. It was challenging. I did the other thing, and that was to have a second child, hoping that things would get better. And things actually got worse. But today, these two children are amazing adults. I love them to bits, and I'm very grateful to their father for having played a role in their lives and being their father. And yeah, they made peace with their dad before he died. Yeah.
Wow, then. I'm not often without words, but often there's times when there is no words and one just has to sit in this moment and feel. Because that's what I'm feeling. I said to someone yesterday, and I think I said it earlier again, there's just certain things that shouldn't happen to little girls and little boys. And we all know that he uses it eventually for his glory. But before we get there, because we love pushing that narrative, that we sit and we say, this should never have happened to you. And so I want us to go to the 51-year-old Lynn, because now you're divorced already?
I'm divorced. The children have been put through varsity, the best education, by God's grace. And my son has graduated, and I'm sitting in a space where I'm saying, this is my time.
Thank you. Come on.
This is my time.
Come on.
I have sacrificed. And this is my time. And I get lured to a meeting at CEO level in Sandton. Again, by someone whom I trust. And when I got to the venue, I asked where the CEO was. And I was told that the CEO is on his way. The room was crowded, but not too crowded. I was asked if I wanted anything to drink while waiting on the CEO. I needed to go to therapy for this. I said yes, I would have a glass of wine. And it took about 4 therapists to tell me, even if you ordered your Coke Zero, you were a target anyway.
Yes.
So it was a syndicate. It was spiked again
Not yet. When you ask the other lady if she
At
has.
this point in time, um, um,
And you could just sit when you read it.
yeah, it was a little bit of a disruption there.
So you in the room.
It's in the room, crowded, not too crowded, and I remember nothing after the first few sips. And what I remember next is waking up in an empty, or coming to in an empty parking lot and being discovered by a group of women
Sure.
who, and all I could say, because by that time I wasn't as well known as I am now, but I was well known. And all I said to them was, Google me. My name is, that's my name. And they realized, they came, smelt my breath. There was no alcohol smell on my breath. And they said, oh my God, this woman has been drugged. And they took me to Morningside Police Station. And Morningside Police Station refused to help me. They looked at me and they said, tell her to come back when she's less drunk. And the women said, but we're telling you now this woman was drugged.
Yeah.
And they said, we're not going to see to her now. And yeah, I had to find my way back to safety, which I did. I could not travel for 29 days because my body was in shock. This time my heart was okay, my head was okay, but my body at a cellular level rejected more trauma, and so I could not travel home for 29 days. I was without a phone. I was without a bag. Everything was in my bag. Yeah, and I remember as that plane took off, I said to God, how? So what happened was I had engagements in Joburg, hectic, senior, high-profile engagements, and I could tell nobody. I simply had to show up. The one was a TBN interview.
Sure.
The one was launching launching a speaker bureau, and I was launched as one of their premium speakers. That was the Wednesday. So that happened the Friday, the Wednesday, and the following Friday was TBN.
In this 29 days of...
That was in the week of the first
week.
And after I showed up, and again, only by God's grace, after I showed up, it was only then, and I think I went into greater shock because I could now let go. I was done showing up, and I showed up in all of my glory as if nothing had happened. But after that, I think I crashed. And when the plane took off, I remember God saying this to me. I actually said to God, what now? My voice will never be taken from me. So it's not even about reclaiming my voice, because I will always have a voice. And he said to me, it's now about that voice that is going to become greater and clearer.
Mm.
And 1 year into PTSD, and one of my books were due. That was the May. Butterfly was due to go to the US publisher by the 1st of August. So June and July, while I was in PTSD, experiencing involuntary panic and anxiety attacks, I had a book to finish. Non-negotiably. And again, by God's grace, by His mercy, His power, His Spirit, He made it possible. And 1 year into PTSD, I was sitting in a coffee shop on a Friday afternoon, and he said, remember, I told you, you'd not lose your voice, but I would accentuate it. And that was the moment that Hear Her Roar as a poem was birthed. And I share a few lines of
Absolutely.
it, just the first few.
I would love you. That's the poem I heard when I first got acquainted with you. Please do.
She may have silently screamed when pain became her second name. She may have swallowed rivers of tears, pretending not to drown. She may even have contemplated death when she felt there was no reason to keep on keeping on. But now hear her roar as she shouts this to the world. While pain became my second name, it was my gateway to victory all the same. And the rivers of tears in which I thought I'd nearly drowned, well, that's now become my riverbed on which my mermaid treasures can now be found. And as for death, death died its bloody death when my divine purpose became my only breath. And now my roar is the tender, compassionate, inspiring whispers. I feed my brothers and sisters so that their own suffering will not starve them. And now my roar is my voice through which I channel those who have been devoiced by systems and perplexities beyond their own control. And now my roar is the half moon that shines across my face as I smile at the beauty of living a purposeful, triumphant life. And now my roar is the license I choose to give myself to unconditionally love myself, because self-love now amplifies my presence in this world. And now my roar is my laughter that tumbles from deep within my soul, bouncing between light and love, and the realization that I was never broken, but always whole. And now my roar is my fulfilled dreams, a self-made oasis birthed in a desert in which I did not ask to be birthed in, get lost in, or get raped in twice. And now my roar is my uncompromised, unapologetic authenticity. And now my roar is the true celebration of my precious soul's sacredity.
I almost don't want to go beyond this, because this in itself is sacred. We have to do a follow-up, Lynn, because as I say to the other warrior women, there's so much more elements to your story that we also want to unpack. But tonight I think was prophetic. And I'm going to ask that our other guest joins us. Yeah.